Well, we have just written our, what did we call it, is touching method. And that seems to be working okay. We tested it out. And I hope you're seeing the pattern here of how to build these things. Basically, what you want to do is, build a little bit, do some refactoring if you need to before you make any changes, and test out the little bit that you did, and then do a little bit more and refactor as needed. Okay, so we've done our is touching part. I think what I want to do now is set them up so that they are, so like for here I would want to say everyone set y to 0. I want to set them up so that they're pointed towards each other, and just to make sure that they're going to collide with each other. And what I'll do is, for our on touching, just make them flip in the opposite direction. So let's look at a simple way to do that. So what I'll want to happen this time, instead of a new still ball, I'll want a new horizontal ball, let's say. Okay, so I'll start off the I'll start one off at 0, say, and one off at canvas width for my x values, and for my y values I'll start them both off at the same place. So let's start them off like halfway down the canvas. Canvas height over 2. I'll do that for both of them, so I'm going to copy this. And for direction, I'm going to need 2 directions too, right? Because I want them going in. Well, I'm going to leave my dy as 0 because I don't want to make any changes in the y direction. I'm just going to change in the x direction, right? So I'll say, let's just say x velocities equals, so if I'm starting out at 0, I want to be moving from, I'll be over here all the way to the left, so I want to move from left to right. So that means my x's are going to increase. So I'll make that be 2 for the first one. Okay, because the guy that's starting out at 0, I want his velocity, his change in x to be 2. And for the guy that's starting off at the canvas width at the other side, I want his velocity to be -2. So he's going to go this way. And that way I can set dx to the x velocities I. Okay, so again we're going to do the same idea of looping through. Let me copy this. Instead of new still ball, I'm going to make a new horizontal ball. And so that way what should happen is that they are going to face each other, and they and move, and they should move until they run into each other. Now we're still not doing any testing about the is touching stuff, but I'm still going to test out just to make sure that they're colliding the way I expect them to. So let's see if that's working. Yep, that's working. Now why does this say false? Well, it says false because when we first start this up, where did I have it? When we first start up, they're not touching, and this only gets called one time, and that's after we create the initial set of balls. So actually I'm going to take this out because that's not telling me anything particularly useful. So let me just delete that. But we do have them colliding nicely. We just have to make sure that we have the behavior we want when they collide. So what do we want to happen when they collide? Let's do our on touching, and then we'll get our on touching to fire at the right time when they actually touch. So I'm going to do a simple, like I said, there's a whole discussion about, ways that things collide, and we might get more into that at another point. But just for this particular exercise, what I want to do is let's just have a simple, since we know already that we're not changing in the y direction at all, we're only changing the x direction, we can just say if I'm on touching, just change my dx to minus. Okay, and then you know what, let's do also, let's just to make sure that that we don't remain touching, let's just scooch the x a little bit more to make sure that after we've changed this that we're not touching anymore, because I don't want to get into a situation where I found out we're touching, but I move a little bit, but we're still touching. So then I move back, and then we're touching, and stuff like that. So I'm gonna put this extra little scooch in here on the x coordinate just to make sure that we don't remain touching. So now the question is, how do I make each of the balls check to see if they're touching, and how do I make them do the on touching thing when they are touching? Well, let's see, maybe what we should do is maybe update that stuff in like every time we do the draw handler, maybe we should check for to see if we're touching or something. So yeah, so we could have like a general maybe update function outside of all the actually this is more of a helper function than a event handler. Where did we put the helper functions? I forgot now. I'm thinking, well, okay, yeah, so I think the helper functions, we decided that those go up above the event handlers. So I'm going to stick that up here. So let's put helper functions. And let's say we have an update function. So now what we can do is look through all the balls and see if they're touching any other balls, right? So we kind of want to do, we know we want to loop through all the balls, so we want to do something like for ball in balls, right? But then for each one of these balls, we want to see if they're touching any other balls. So let's think about that. I guess what we want to do is maybe what we need to do is if ball, let's create a list of touched balls all the time, and then if that list is empty, that means we haven't touched any. But if it's not empty, then this is going to basically, an empty list evaluates to false, and a list that's not empty evaluates to true. So if that list is not empty, and let's pass it the list of balls that we want to check to see if it's touching any of those. Then we'll say, then we'll call our on touching for that ball. How about that? That seems kind of right, but now we have to write this touched list thing. So let's do that. So let's say, and I'm not calling the update yet because I want to make sure I get this touched list thing right. So let's say def touched list, and I have myself, because now this is a method. Now I'm back inside the classes, so I need this self, and then I'm going to have a list of other I'll call it others with an S. Okay, so I'm going to check the list of other balls. So the way that's going to work is I'm going to say for, I got to be careful here now. Oh yeah. No, I think I got to be careful here now, because actually I want to build a list of touched, the ones that were touched, right? So let's do that. So let's say we'll start that as the empty list, and then we'll append to that list if any other balls that are touching this one. So let's say for ball in others. Now there's one thing we got to check, because we know that if you test, if you're testing yourself, then your XY is, if the other ball is this ball. So if ball is self, then we don't want to add that one to the list, right? We don't want to add ourselves to the list, because we know it's going to be true that we know this distance is going to be less than the radius, less than this stuff, right? Because the distance is going to be 0, basically. Our distance from ourself is 0. So let's say if ball is not self, that's the only time when we want to check for the is touching. So if ball is not self and ball is touching self, then we add add that ball. So let me say touched append that ball. Okay, and that's how we build up our list of all things we're touching. So now when we're done with the for loop, we return touched. And this way, if this never happened, if none of these none of the other balls ever touched this one, then this is just going to be an empty list that we're returning. But otherwise, we'll have collected all the ones that we're touching, which, you know, might be useful at some point, you know, depending on the gameplay. You might want to know what other objects you're touching, right? So let's say, so if this touch list is not empty, then we're going to run the on touching stuff. Okay, so let's do this. At this point, it might be advised to make sure you're collecting a list of you know, of the balls you're touching correctly. I'm going to be a little bit. I think I'm just going to gun it at this point and just see, because then I can always back up and test it. But in general, you want to be really careful and go kind of step by step with this testing. So let me just see what happens. Oh, yeah, see? That's why you want to be really careful. So it didn't work. So now I got to go back and see what did I mess up here. So I am calling this touched list here. And I should be looking at the other ball. So let's see. So there's a couple of things I can test, right? I can see, I can try to print out my my list of balls that I'm touching. So let me try to do that. So what we could do is we already have this still ball test, right? So let's regroup. Let's go back to where we have the still ball, and when we print out let's see, ball 0, oops, ball 0 is touching balls 1, so we could do that. And we could also, let's try printing out balls 0, what did we call it? Touch list or something? Yeah, touched list. Balls. Okay, so this way we can regroup and make sure this touching is still working and see if our touched list works. So this, you know, and this happens to me all the time. If I skip a step, I find out, oh, I shouldn't have skipped that step. So be advised, in general, it's really good to really try to go step by step by step. So let's see what this does. So this gave me a list back with a ball object in it. Maybe what I should do is, so I can see which ball it is, I could say make this a string, right? And then, oh wait, because this wants to be, so this should be a list of things, right? For ball in this list, let's print, just remember this, we wrote this str function before so that we can get the details on that ball, so we can see exactly which one we're touching. So yeah, it looks like we're getting that ball 0, bouncy 0 is touching bouncy 1. That's what we want. So it looks like this guy's working. Oh, we wrote an update function, but we never called the update function. So let's put the update function right here in the draw handler. Okay, that seems like a logical place. So we'll update, and then we'll draw. So we want to do check, yeah, because we want to check for touching before we move anything, right? I think so. So now let's go back to using the horizontal. Let's see, copy. Instead of having the balls be still, paste there. And I don't need this anymore. Alright, so now let's see if we're doing it. Boink! Hey, there we go. Alright, so and we know they're wrapping and banging into each other on the other side that way. So good. So now we have our basic some basic behavior. I think in the next video we'll talk about navigation a little bit, how we can move this guy around with the keyboard.